Hello everybody, how's it going today? Glowplasma 231 here, back again today to about Kagurabachi, chapter number 99. Oh my gosh, we are one away from 100. It is just crazy to imagine as somebody who opened up this series over 2 years ago and like, oh, what's this new Kagurabachi manga? It's been memed on Twitter for this character like holding this pose with his sword. No, look at now, it's 99 chapters. That's just absolutely insane by every single metric. But this chapter is titled Strongest in quotation marks, so like strongest, but maybe not strongest. I'm doing the thing where like I'm holding up both of my hands and like my pointer finger and my middle finger are like moving up and down like the quotation marks things, you know, like at least it's something that I as an American have been doing since I was like 6 years old. So like he's the strongest in quotation marks. Every time I say another word, I'm just moving my fingers up and down beside me, right? But either way, this is just an absolutely insane chapter of Kagurabachi. Not only because like I did not expect that Ikuto was going to be continuing to do stuff in this chapter. I'd like, all right, he had a really cool moment last time. Now we're going to switch over to like Kiri and Hakuri and maybe also see what Yura is up to and Izami and all of them. And to be fair, we do get a little bit of all of that, but one of my favorite parts of this chapter is strictly how Ikuto, after his performance last chapter, is just still hanging around. We also finally learned the name of this strongest Hishaku member, and we end up learning that his name is Yukisada. It's said towards the end of the chapter, but just for like simplicity's sake, I am saying it now because like, is there any harm in doing that? You know what I'm saying? But it's pretty cool not to only learn his name, but also sort of like how his power system maybe works and like a few weird things that go around him. We'll be, of course, talking about it as we delve into chapter itself. Like, hey, Kiri and Hakuri show up. Hakuri like creates his own sword style by launching a sword if any so. Like, it's just a lot of really cool things that happen in this chapter in Kagurabachi. Of course, leading off on a fact that is like, oh my gosh, it is finally happening. And Chihiro and Samura still aren't here. Either way, this is just a great chapter of Kagurabachi, and I cannot wait to just sit down and talk about chapter number 99. But of course, before we can do this, let's just quickly mention what happened last time in Kagurabachi, and it was a whole chapter about Ikuto Hagiwara, the worthless commander, as last chapter was titled, and him and, of course, his dead friend Kugara and his animated mask that pretty much Ikuto animates with his iron sand sorcery, right? And Kugara was going around just being like this agent of evil, like, wahaha, let's go, Ikuto, right? Doing all this various stuff there, and pretty much the whole idea is that they were searching for the vessel, and that Ikuto, being that he's got like magnetic iron sand powers, he pretty much did a CT scan, don't think about it too hard, of the entire Kabanabe headquarters and eventually came to the understanding this boy up here is the second barrier scroll in them pretty much, right? So if we can take down them, take out this vessel, then Chihiro and Samura and all of the other allies are going to be flocking in here to the Kabanabe HQ, and it'll be a very good thing at the end of the day, right? And the very last thing we saw was Ikuto sending Kugara up, piercing through the floors of the Kabanabe HQ, and going through and piercing, of course, as we now know his name, Yukisada, straight through the stomach, right? And we start off this chapter in pretty much that same exact place. As, of course, we remember that Yukisada was facing off, or at least getting ready to face off, 3 Kabunabe members. Of course, we don't know who 2 of these guys are, but we know that one of them was the guy who was yelling at Natsuki a few chapters ago, being like, hey, what are you doing? Stop breaking the walls and all of that various stuff, right? And as you'll be seeing here in a few minutes, I think he kicks the bucket, and it must be terrible to see, like, your last thing be like, no, Ikuto, why did you break up the floor, right? But of course, I'll be calling him Renji Kabanabe because, like, he's got Renji's hairstyle from Bleach. What else am I supposed to call him if we don't have a name? Hokuzono, please give us more names. But either way, we just see that these 3 Kabanabe sorcerers getting ready to face off against, of course, Yukisada, or at least they were until Ikuto sent Kugara piercing up through the ceiling. And we really start off this chapter with Kugara just laughing maniacally and Ikuto crawling up from the ground. Pretty much like, I think what it is like they were one floor above where Ikuto and Kugara were. So it's really not that much work for Ikuto to just, like, crawl up, like, a floor or something. Or maybe, like, he used his Iron Sand ability to, like, to fly up through it or something like that. Like, there could be a very myriad of what's going on here for Ikuto's powers, and I do like this sort of mystique of, like, how did he actually get up here so quick and all of this various stuff, right? Well, either way, Renji Kabanabi's just like, oh, Mr. Hagiwara, like, you're still alive and beating? And Ikuto's just like, hey, this guy right here is the other vessel. And it's crazy, like, he's just some brat of a kid, pretty much, right? And he's just like, hey, I'm sorry, kid, but we gotta kill you or we can't even call in our reinforcements, so you gotta say bye-bye, right? And of course, as Ikuto says this, we see, like, his glasses, like, almost falling apart. There's blood dripping down from his nose and his mouth in all of these times, right? And of course, as this happens, Yukisada just reaches into his jacket and casually, just like, it's not even like he's hurt, he just pulls out a knife. And of course, as he pulls out this knife, he, like, suddenly jumps up and goes to attack Ikuto. But of course, Ikuto is a master of sorcery, or at least he is very proficient in it. And he uses his Iron Sand to go through, and he just cuts off Yukisada's arm. Like, it is just gone. And of course, all of this Iron Sand goes into his body as well. It sort of erupts from inside him, right? And, like, forms all of these, like, spike balls. We saw it used last chapter as well, right? And as all of this is happening, Kugara is just looking, he's like, whoa, that guy is so fast, like, oh my god, right? And of course, Ikuto's also thinking, like, man, like, with a wound like that as well, like, what is this kid? Like, he even says out loud, this kid is tenacious. And of course, as all of this Iron Sand is ripping through Yukisada's body, of course, he just grabs another knife, and we just see that he goes and takes it, and he just goes to try to stab Ikuto again. Like, he is not letting up whatsoever. And here in the moment, Ikuto pretty much, like, lets go of him with his Iron Sand and sort of throws him back against the other side of the room. And of course, Ikuto's just standing here being like, all right, how am I going to take out this kid? As we see that Yukisada just holds up his left arm that was just cut off by Ikuto's Iron Sand, and he's just like, hey, no apology needed, old man, I'm only 17 years old, like, I'm actually grown up, you know? As we just see his severed arm reforms here in the moment. And of course, Ikuto's thinking, like, wow, that's interesting. Regeneration, it's almost the perfect ability to buy time with. And he just thinks, like, hey, but still, the psychological strength to endure the pain knowing that he'll regenerate it at the end of the day, and the tenacious sacrifices he made to become a force field vessel, and he just says out loud, like, hey, you're clearly no ordinary kid. And of course, as he says something about that, the figment of his imagination, Kugara is just like, what do you mean 17 is still a kid? You know what I'm saying? Like, he's not an adult, like, he's a kid. Like, adults, like, I only view adults, like, at 25 plus, your brain's not fully developed. I want to imagine, like, Kugara is slightly problematic as well, and, like, he's like, you know what, children should be able to smoke cigarettes, you know what I'm saying? I just imagine that's, like, Kugara's main personality. He's like, of course, we just see the mask here in the moment, like, all of this blood and, like, just crowding around the spike on his face. He's like, you know what I'm saying? Children for methamphetamine. That's what I've been going on my entire life. Like, what do you mean children can't smoke cigarettes? I say alcohol as soon as they come out of the womb. That's what I'm thinking. You know what I'm saying? And I want to imagine Ikuto's just being there like, where did this come? He's a figment of my imagination. I'm the ventriloquist here. Where is this coming from, right? But either way, as all of this happens, Ikuto just thinks like, hey, he's no ordinary kid. But as he thinks this, he just collapses to the ground. And of course, Kugara and all of the Iron Sand that was animating him also fall to the ground here in the moment. And as Ikuto just falls to the ground here, he just thinks like, oh, that was a mistake. We didn't eat anything today, and we really haven't eaten anything in ages. Like, maybe we battled a little bit too hard on an empty stomach, pretty much. And that's what I'm saying. Maybe Kugara's been right the entire time. If he had a little bit of cocaine before this, maybe he would be more amped up to battle. Like, come on, I think Ikuto's whole character should be about, like, using drugs, you know what I'm saying? But all of that said aside, one of my favorite jokes of this chapter is how Kugara's mask is still animated here in the moment. And Kugara's just like, hey, I'm sorry, we need, like, a 20-second break. If you don't mind, just, like, say it over there, you know what I'm saying? Like, I don't even know your name yet, but I think it's, like, Yukisada or something. Like, just stay over there for 20 seconds while we, like, regenerate ourselves real quick, and that would be pretty, like, cash money, you know what I'm saying? But as he sort of goes through and does all of this, Ikuto just yells on the floor to everybody around him like, hey, somebody, quick, decapitate the kid, pretty much, right? And of course, hearing this, the three other Kabanabi sorcerers in the room all start to run towards Yukisada. But before they can get there, we get one of my favorite page cuts here of the chapter as we go from page 5 as we head on to page 6, and all of a sudden atop the page, we just see Hakuri and the Iso storehouse mask sitting on his face. As we see Kiri and of course her massive Odachi katana summoned here in the moment, that all of the gloop that's like, hey, we're summoning Kiri now, right? It's all around her. And Yukisada is sort of like just sitting there unaware, and he sort of looks back and he's like, oh crap, and he's barely able to dodge out of the way of Kiri's initial strike. But of course, Kiri is relentless. She goes around dancing with her boy, and eventually she goes through and cuts through a good portion of Yukisada's character, right? Like, we see that she cuts off not only one of his hands, but the other, like, rest of his forearm as well, as he's, like, trying to block the blade, and she pretty much gets, like, halfway through his body before everything starts to regenerate, and her sword gets stuck within his body. That's actually a really cool regeneration move that I don't know if I've seen too many times in fiction before. Like, of course, the whole idea of, like, hey, you stab a blade into the wall and you can't easily, like, pull it back out. But just the whole idea of, like, oh yeah, you swing it into something and then it gets stuck in there like a wall, but instead of it's a body of somebody, you can't easily pull it out. A very interesting way for that to happen, right? But Kiri's like, ah, damn, seriously? As pretty much Yukisada goes through and pushes her back, kicking her into the wall pretty much, right? But of course, as this happens, there's another attacker here, none other than Hakuri, who holds his hands pretty much getting ready to summon something in front of him, but also it looks like he's getting ready to use an Iso as well. As we see that he just comes through here, and he summons a regular katana in front of him. And we see the katana is, of course, pointing towards Yukisada here, and then he just declares, Iso! As with his shockwave powers, he fires the sword almost like a bullet towards Yukisada. It is just such a cool move that we see Hakuri use here. And even besides the point that we know Hakuri's Isos have been getting weaker throughout this entire raid on the Kabanabi HQ, it's still like a great way, like, hey, if a shockwave's not effective, what about a sharp shockwave, pretty much? And I just like, that's a very cool idea, right? But of course, as we would expect from the strongest Shishaku member, Yukisada is able to dodge out of the way of this blade that Hakuri just fired towards him. But of course, Kiri is behind Yukisada and grabs a blade in her hands. It goes through, swings it, and she ends up succeeding in decapitating Yukisada here in the moment. And of course, as this happens, Yukisada pretty much goes through, and with his body, like, cut off his head, he takes out Kiri's blade and then throws it back at her, pretty much making her, like, have to block her own blade, pretty much. As Yukisada jumps up into the sky, and he grabs his head in his hand, pretty much. And Hakuri's like, well, what in the world is that, right? As Yukisada just starts to speak, and he just says, if Yura says something's white, then even if it's black, it's still white. And I love how Ikuto's just on the ground being like, what the hell is this kid talking about? As he just continues saying, like, hey, I'm the strongest Hishaku. Or at least, that's what Yura said. So it has to be true. And we just get a look from Ikuto looking at Yukisada here in the moment. He's thinking like, oh no, even decapitated. Is he invincible? No, there's absolutely no way. There must be some trick. Even if we have to boil or burn him, we've got to hurry and do it quickly, somehow. But of course, as he's thinking about all of this, he thinks about the flowers of the male diction. Of course, the Magatsumi in general. And all of a sudden, he just freaks out, and he restores his powers just in time to go through and grab Kiri and Hakuri with his iron standalog for himself, and he goes and he drags them all back to one side of the wall of this room. And then with the rest of his iron sand, he makes a complete wall barrier in the room, almost reminiscent of whenever the pine tree sorcerer went through and created all of, like, the wall of pines in the Rakuzaichi arc. It's very similar to that. As we just see that in the side of the room, we see Ikuto is here along with Hakuri and Kiri. And of course, all of the regular other Kabanami members, including like Renji Kabanami and the two others, are standing there in the same room as Yukisada. And as this happens, we see these three sorcerers fall to the ground as flowers start to sprout out of their body. They're waking their way up, blooming here in the moment, as Yura walks into the room. the centipede coiling around his body. And in Yura's hand, he is holding a severed arm. We don't see whose it is, or we really can't tell that much about it, but all we know is that it's severed, bloody, and absolutely beaten. The other side of the room stands Yukisada, and he's like, "Oh, hey, Yura." Of course, his, head is still in his hand. It's a very comedic, image, you know what I'm saying? As we just see that Yura, of course, his black eyes here in a moment, very reminiscent of the Sword Saints, just is like, "Oh, Yukisada, well done." As Yukisada just smiles here in the moment, as Yura just comes through and walks over the bodies of all of these other Kabanabi members who he just killed with the powers of the Magatsumi. And of course, behind this wall of iron sand, Ikuto just stands here thinking damn it, we are way too late. And he's like, damn it, I thought that Mr. Izami was holding him off, but for one instant, I glimpsed at what he was holding. As we get a very good image of that hand in his arms. If I had to guess, it probably is Izami's arm, but we really don't have any concrete knowledge right now, even though it would make the most sense if it was Izami's arm, right? But as everything goes through here, we see that Yura starts reaching over towards the wall with all of the iron sand, and as he gets his hands close to it, he sort of pulls back and just thinks no, enough delaying. As the rest of this chapter really just focuses on Yura walking through the Kabanabi headquarters. Everywhere he walks, flowers sprout in his path. As he walks through control rooms, people lay dead on the floor with flowers sprouting out of all of their bodies. He walks through some tunnels. He walks through the control room where they monitor the Sword Saint. And eventually, he finds a pathway downstairs. He walks down it, and he stands atop of this concrete mound. Broken pillars lay on top of it. As Yura bends down, places his hand on this dome of concrete, and Yura just says, "Down below, he's here." As he just looks down, and below him, of course, the Sword Master stands. And on that note is where we leave Chapter 99 of Kagurabachi. Now, as I mentioned earlier, this is an amazing chapter of Kagurabachi in my opinion. Yes, is everybody going to love this chapter 100%? No, I do think there's some issues where hey, come on, could we not have seen what Yura did to Izami and all these other people? It's you start off this fight and you make it very interesting, but then you cut away before we actually get to the end of it, which does lead into a lot of mystery of oh, what actually happened to them? What's going on with Natsuki? What's going on with Furuha? What's going on with Izami? And while I do think there is an issue to be talked about there, it's something that we've seen enough times with Hokuzono to sort of be able to expect it at this point, if you know what I'm saying. But along with this whole idea of what Yukisada's whole motivation is this whole idea of hey, if Yura says something is black, then even if it's white, it's black, right? And I do like that whole idea as well as the shades of black, white, and gray. Not everything's just black and white. There's a whole lot of middle ground alongside them. But I also just love that wording of being yeah, maybe Yukisada just doesn't care. Whatever Yura says goes, no matter what other issues there could be. And I'm very interested to see how that works into his entire character. Of course, a big part of his character that we learn in this chapter is, oh, is he invincible? It doesn't seem to be he's using any plant regeneration powers that may come from the Magatsumi or something like that. So it seems his regeneration just comes from his innate sorcery of some kind. And in general, yeah, that'd be a very good sorcery to have if you are also the vessel. You know what I'm saying? And also does you being the vessel you have to lose one of your organs and a hole is formed in your body? Does that mean he just doesn't have one of these because he just regenerates it even though he is a vessel and maybe the vessel eats away to his stomach or something? But oh, and of course, like I mentioned earlier, one of my favorite parts of this chapter is really just Ikuto's continued role in it. If he wasn't there to realize oh no, something with the Magatsumi is getting ready to happen based on Yukisada's abilities, then Kiri and Hakuri would be probably dead right now. And of course, the whole idea of like, why didn't Yura go through and kill Hakuri in the moment, being that he knows that it's something that he should actually do. Or maybe he views it like, oh, if I'm going to ripen up Chihiro more and like get him on my side possibly, then maybe I should leave Hakuri alive and like possibly kill him in front of him or something like that, you know? Granted, I don't think Hakuri is dying whatsoever, but still a very interesting thing to think about of like, why didn't Yura go through? He's got this power. It would have only taken him a few more seconds to go through and deal with Hakuri fully, right? Of course, Hakuri's whole thing I mentioned earlier of, hey, I'm firing a sword at you using my So ability is just a really cool thing. Seeing Kiri transport in with the storehouse as well, coming through, swing her massive Odachi, and then like, oh, grab a regular katana and decapitate bro. It's just a very interesting way to portray all of this battles. Of course, getting us to the whole idea of next chapter is chapter 100. And Yura may finally meet with the Sword Saint, and also, if I had to guess, he's going to be meeting with Chihiro and Samura as well. And legitimately for next chapter, I don't think I can predict anything that's going to be happening. Maybe we'll see a little bit of like Aruha, maybe Natsuki as well, like trying to like get up Izami, or maybe Izami will also be coming through and like trying to help, and maybe he'll sacrifice himself to like get everybody else out of here or something like that. Like, there's just so many absolute things that could happen, and I don't feel confident in sitting down here and trying to predict any part of it whatsoever, because I know whatever I predict is going to be wrong. It's like the Glowplasma curse. If I say something about Kagurabachi, you better believe me, it's not going to happen. And for that reason, I retract my statement earlier that Kugara's whole character should be about drugs and cigarettes and all of those things. It shouldn't be about that. No matter what, 100%, it shouldn't be about that. It wouldn't be funny. It wouldn't be likable at all. Like, it'd make him actually a really bad character. Hokuzono, like, this is like reverse psychology, you know what I'm saying? Like, please do it. Like, I want Kugara to be like, children should smoke cigarettes guy. That'd be really funny. But with all of that being said, I have nothing else to say about this chapter of Kagurabachi, chapter number 99. If you enjoyed this video, I have covered Kagurabachi plenty of other times on this YouTube channel. I think I started covering it like chapter number 46. So like, wow, it's like I've covered the series for over half of its Shonen Jump run. That is absolutely insane to think about. And yeah, I will see you guys next week on Sunday, November 9th for Kagurabachi chapter number 100. Until then, I have nothing else to say. The playlist of all of those Kagurabachi videos will be in the description box of this video, along with the in-card of the video. I cover anime and manga content. And yeah, I'll catch you guys next time. Kugara for cigarette, like, champion. Yeah, I'll catch you guys next time. This is Glowplasma, signing out.